So once you are sworn in, what's your
first priority? Well, the first priority obviously is the budget, because in an election year, as you know, you're a couple of months behind. So we have our work cut out for us as we bring forward our budget plan for 2011 and start the process of public consultation, and then ultimately the decision making before March, or before the end of March.
Michael, I was just listening to Michael Harris on the way here. He said he thinks it might have been part of your strategy to lower expectations on the campaign trail. So that,
in what sense?
well, so that when you know, I think he was pointing to Obama and he pointed to someone else, that people get all hyped up that the world is going to change. And yeah. So if you sort of keep things...
Well, you know, I can comment that I've always said, and people I think get tired of hearing me say this, I would much rather underpromise and overdeliver than the opposite. You know, I put forward a plan that I thought that would pass the test of council support, because obviously you need council to do it. And I've spent a fair amount of time just in the last 24 hours when I speak to members of council, letting them know that I value their input, and I'm looking forward to working with them in a team approach. And I think they've certainly been appreciative of that.
Light rail, what
Yeah.
happens if it doesn't come in at 2.1?
Well, excuse me, as I said, we're going to obviously have to sit down with staff and look at what we have to do to get the plan off the ground. So, you know, it could be one of a number of options, including it, you know, looking at alterations to the plan to bring it within budget, or, as you know, to quote Mayor O'Brien, to cut the suit to fit the cloth. But you know, I've met with a number of city staff as well as outside experts, and they are confident that the numbers that they've put forward are solid and defensible. And until I see the actual tenders, we're not going to know the definitive
And
cost.
when is that?
It's my understanding it's next year.
Like 2011?
Yeah.
Have you picked a chief of staff?
No.
How long will that take?
Hard to tell, because you know, I haven't even had a chance to meet with my campaign staff today, because we're going to meet this afternoon and it's just gone by the wayside. So we're going to meet tomorrow. But you know, ideally, I'd like to have my office staffed up, or the bulk of it staffed up by December 1st. I would hope not. You know, I think it's incumbent upon us all, after the very long and disruptive strike we saw last year, to do our very best to improve relations with our employees. And I made a point, you know, in my speech of singling out our employees, to say that, you know, we want to work with them in a spirit of cooperation, and they understand that we don't have a bottomless pit of money to deal with every demand. But at the same time, I think, you know, we understand that they should be respected as human beings and as an important part of the City of Ottawa. We're a very labor-intense organization, and if we don't have our employees rowing the boat in the same direction, then we're not going to accomplish an awful lot. Were you surprised by the magnitude of your win?
You were humbled.
I was, yeah. You know, everyone doesn't believe this, but when the polls came in, I think your poll was the first one, and I'm just trying to think of the sequence.
Yeah.
And it showed anywhere, you know, it fluctuated, sort of 8%, 13%, 20%. I didn't think it was, you know, I didn't think 2 months ago that it was as wide a margin as it was, and yet the polls were pretty accurate. You know, I think your poll was almost spot on with what the results were. There was a fairly, and I really started to get a sense in the last couple of weeks, the reaction I was getting at doors when I was going out to different events. There was a real desire for change, and when that momentum starts building, it's really difficult for an opponent to turn that tide.
So this year we're going to see nothing higher than 2.5%. Peter Clark says we can get to 0 though.
Well,
easily.
Oh, that's right. You told me you were writing. You spoke to him. Yeah. Look at there's. I've had experience running a zero base budget, and I know that there's some pretty heavy cutting that you have to do, and the staff tell me that you've got to cut $60 million to get to 0, and it also puts you behind the 8 ball in perpetuity because you've lost that revenue growth for that period and you'll never make it up.